Two former Nigerian state governors, Nyame, former governor of Taraba State, and Joshua Dariye, former governor of Plateau State, have now been released from the Kuje Correctional Centre and regained their freedom after President Muhammadu Buhari granted them and 157 other persons presidential pardon on grounds of age, health, and other issues, amidst some considerations following an approval by the Council of State. The two former governors were earlier convicted and jailed for stealing state funds in celebrated cases of Nigeria's anti-corruption drive to show the world how serious we are as a country. Now, this controversial presidential pardon has now been greeted with condemnation from different quarters, with some persons saying it will dampen the morale and commitment of officers in Nigeria's anti-graft agencies. This singular move queries the moral ground of President Buhari's government to claim that it is fighting corruption, including that of the EFCC, ICPC, or even the police, to pursue other cases of corruption. Aside this, some non-governmental organizations such as the Society Legislative Advocacy Centre, or CISLAC, and Transparency International have also condemned the pardon granted to the corrupt politicians. The CSOs are worried about the effect of this on the anti-corruption war. And so we ask, is Buhari's anti-corruption war dead? We'll be joined by anti-corruption activists and the senior advocate of Nigeria to look at these issues. I'm Somna Sambo, and this is the Arise interview. Very warm welcome to the show. Now, from the government house to prison, and now they can breathe the air of freedom. The former governors of Plateau and Taraba States, earlier convicted for corruption and now have been released, are enjoying freedom everywhere. Senator Joshua Dariye and Nyame were among a list of over 100 inmates granted state pardon by the National Council of State, chaired by President Buhari 4 months ago. Both men were serving jail terms on corruption charges. Dariye, who governed Plateau State between 1999 and 2007, was convicted for criminal breach of trust and misappropriation of funds to the tune of 1.16 billion naira. Now, Nyame was sentenced to 12 years in prison for stealing 1.6 billion naira. The state pardon has continued to generate uproar among Nigerians. Well, for more on this, we have in the studio CHUKWUMA-MACHUKWU UMEH, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria and former Attorney General. Now, we are also being joined by AUWAL RAFSANJANI, who is the Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Centre and, of course, the head of the Nigerian Office of Transparency International. And at the offsite studio, we are being joined by GABRIEL NWAMBU, the Director General Global Center for Conscious Living Against Corruption. Gentlemen, we'd like to welcome all of you. And I start with you, the senior advocate of Nigeria. Have we lost the fight against corruption, especially under Buhari's government?
Yes, I think so. First of all, may I start by saying, I believe in what the Bible said, that the soul that seeth shall die. So whoever has put his hand into the till of the public fund should be punished. But I do not think the issue of their pardon is the core issue of corruption in Nigeria. There is what we call agent procurators, those who lay the foundation for you to go into corruption. One of the most serious aspects of corruption is electoral corruption. When you know in your mind you are not elected by the electorate and you manipulate yourself into an office, is a constitutional corruption. When you know that Section 14 expects you to spread your hand all over the constituency of Nigeria to make all your appointments, and you didn't do that, and you limit your appointment to a particular section, that is constitutional corruption. And when there is corruption at the center of power, when there is an element that encourages power or that is vested with the governmental portfolio, that country is almost going down. So I appreciate and I agree that the pardon, yes, the state has power to grant pardon. But it is not just that is the issue. What about the backgrounds? What about the kind of things you do? When you see people machete their citizens down and you do not prosecute them, that is power corruption.
So do we call it security corruption?
When you see, when the country is being swallowed into violence and banditry, and you do nothing, that is the worst form of corruption. Corruption is not just issue of taking money from the public tilt. No. The one that the Constitution recognizes for you to use the power for the good of the whole totality of Nigeria, and you're not doing it. That is the worst form of corruption.
Okay, and we'll be coming to you, AUWAL Rafsanjani. President Muhammadu Buhari came on a very strong footing of fighting corruption. I mean, in the first 6 months of his being in government, the system was just adjusting itself because, I mean, the thinking was that no one would ever dare Buhari with the issue of corruption. But we've seen the Accountant General of the Federation being accused of embezzling 109 billion naira. And of course, we've seen other state officials, and it looks like the fight that Buhari had against the likes of Alison Desani Madueke and all of that was just a joke. What do you make of Buhari's anti-corruption fight as he comes very close to the end of his second tenure?
Thank you very much. I think first and foremost, Nigerians were overrated and over-expected Buhari administration to fight corruption, knowing fully well that there was never any blueprint on fighting corruption under this administration. It was more of propaganda and more of like deception that the government was going to fight corruption. 7 years after, there is no tangible plan from the side of government to fight corruption. What are the key indicators that a government is willing to fight corruption? All the key indicators, you could see that if you examine them, including the existing legal framework that's supposed to be, strengthened to fight corruption, they are not being strengthened by the administration. Number one, public procurement law. We have a public procurement law that is completely abused, disregarded under this administration. Contract fraud, lack of contract transparency is the order of the day. Secondly, you have a freedom of information that is supposed to help in terms of fighting corruption. This administration, they have no agenda on ensuring compliance of the freedom of information. You also have other legal framework that are needed in order to fight corruption, that this administration did not bother to actually have them with all sorts of sincerity. Yes, you have the whistleblowing policy that was meant just purposely for government to generate revenue and to recover certain items or rather properties, assets that were stolen by the previous looters. They gave that incentives. At the end of the day, the incentive or the policy itself is dead. We have been advocating for the enactment of the whistleblowing law in order to protect whistleblowers and also encourage whistleblowers to come up with credible information that can help aid fight against corruption. This administration looked the other way around. This administration is desperate to recover money stolen by the other, fellow looters. Civil society carried the campaign all over the world. Personally, my organization and myself, we've gone around everywhere in the world, from the United States to Britain to Europe, advocating for the return of Nigerians' assets. In 2017, December precisely, there was a conference that was organized by the British government and the American government, hosted in Washington, D.C. We were all there. We supported Nigerian government to ensure that we articulated position for Nigeria to get its asset returned. Agreement was reached in that conference on what we call global forum for asset recovery, with clear, tangible agenda on how to recover money and how transparently to manage it. We came back. Since when we returned, we've been advocating for the government to show more transparency in how assets are recovered and managed. You have police recovering, EFCC, ICPC, Custom, Code of Conduct, NLD, all of them recovering. No single data showing how these assets were recovered and utilized.
Well,
now,
what the Office of the Attorney General, sorry,
no,
if I may
I'm coming
to
that.
The Office of the Attorney General was coordinating all of that.
The Attorney General Office, was, actually hijacked those recovery, and today you hear the news that the Attorney General, with his assistants, they could not account for the asset that they are sharing. Very embarrassing. EFCC had to invite some of the Malemi, the Attorney General aide, and of course the aides are nothing but rather they are answering Malemi, because if the Minister of Justice and Attorney General did not give them the responsibility, they cannot do. So in other words, the Minister of Justice himself need to come clear on this, because that he used the same argument to ambush Magu, saying that Magu did not account for the recovered asset. Now that it is established that his office, presided by him, assets are missing and there's no transparency in the management of those assets. So you could see that clearly the Party Against Corruption, and with renewed attack on media and civil society, even shamelessly saying that you want to sanction CNN, you want to sanction BBC, you want to sanction Daily Trust. In fact, they even find some of the media. It shows you that any government that wants to fight corruption will find civil society and media as allied, not antagonizing them, because they help to complement sincere effort of government to fight corruption. Now, having said this, with all those,
so that will bring Gabriel
with all this drama that we are seeing with some of the anti-corruption agencies doing without thorough investigation, doing drama, going to break, suspect houses, and then the next minute they are granted bail. It doesn't show intelligence in the way, a manner in which Party Against Corruption is done. It is simply a media and just a joke, because if people have looted that much and you have evidence, you should be able to follow the due process to ensure that they are prosecuted. But when you do a shady and thorough investigation, at the end of the day, you even go to court and the court throws this thing away. It shows that we are not prepared as a nation to face this. So the other thing that I want to say, is to say that, the fact that you are shielding politically exposed person from being prosecuted or from pardoning them, it shows that political corruption in Nigeria is very high. The last speaker had spoken about the fact that you use electoral process to impose yourself to do all sorts of political corruption, using vote buying, using all sorts of things. Illicit financial flow is going on under this government more than any other government. We are losing more than $18 billion every year. Not only that, ECOWAS issued a report showing how Nigerian financial system are being used to finance terrorism and carry out money laundering.
Yeah, and of course the government keeps saying that they know the financiers of this terrorism and we don't see them being prosecuted. And I come to you, Gabriel Nwambu. I know you've done a lot in trying to expose corruption, but we've seen the anti-graft agencies, the EFCC and ICPC, doing a lot of what looks like a piecemeal approach, according to lots of critics, saying that it's only Yahoo boys that are being prosecuted more and jailed finally, but that those who are the apex are not being jailed the way I mean we would love as citizens to see them. And even when they're eventually jailed, like we had Dariye, and then of course Jolie Nyame, there's a state pardon being granted to them. What do you make of all of those things?
Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I must state very clearly that this administration is an administration that came under two main issues, in 2014 and 2015. It talked about, excessive fights, to stampede the security challenges we have in the country. It also came up to talk about being able to fight corruption to a standstill, at least reducing it to the barest minimum. See, what do we see in the country now? First of all, presidential pardon on corruption cases is inconsistent with the rule of law, and is against the public opinion on fundamental laws. So you also look at the manner at which, the lopsided manner at which the presidential pardon has been done. You know, it justifies the public perception. You know, this pardon has justified that the perception of lopsidedness on this present administration is really true. I recall that in 2017, I led an anti-Magu demonstration here in the FCT. Thereafter, this said Magu was removed from the office. A presidential panel was also set up, you know, to try him, headed by retired Justice Salami. And this Justice Salami also indicted Magu and stated clearly, you know, that there are infractions of the law as far as Magu was concerned. What do we see today? We even hear that the man has been promoted to an AIG and all that. So, you see, the fight against corruption in Nigeria, you know, is Yahoo boys. Are they the main problem we have in the country? Yahoo boys are not the problem we have in the country. It is not the problem at all. So what we are looking at very clearly is that an individual stole over 100 billion of naira. Just one individual. If he has to spend 1 million naira every day, it will take, he will spend 365 million in 1 year. In 3 years, he must have spent 3.6 billion naira. Now, it will take him 100 years to spend 36 billion. So not even up to half of the money he has stolen, not even up to a quarter of the money he has stolen. So my question is, how many years really would that individual live on Earth, on planet Earth? And how old is he now? See, the problem we have is that this country as a nation has not decided to fight corruption. All we hear is speeches, you know, intended to make. In fact, what the populace of Nigerians were made to believe, we have seen that it is not really true. We have seen that it is not correct. That statements that were made in 2014 and 2015, there is an aberration, as we can see right now. So the fight against corruption in Nigeria totally has completely failed because it's not in tandem with the promises made by the said politicians in 2014 and 2015 respectively.
Okay, and just before I come to the senior advocate here, I just want you to talk about some of the crucial issues that we have in terms of the laws that have been put in place. We've seen Buhari trying to bring in place the process of crime bill, which is meant to ensure that, you know, any process of crime is properly managed and then is institutionalized and all of that. We've seen the government trying to see how they can enforce the whistleblowers bill that Rafsanjani talked about. What are the other things that you have noticed that the government has been trying? I mean, the Buhari administration has been trying on its own little part to try to fight against corruption, because the government is also saying that a lot of Nigerians are naturally corrupt, so it's difficult to actually contain them. Can you hear me, Gabriel?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah. Oh. Come again with your
question. Okay, so I was saying that what do you make of the efforts of the Buhari administration to try to put in place some anti-graft laws, like the process of crime bill, we've seen it, and then of course the whistleblower policy that was earlier introduced, and what other efforts do you think that the Buhari government has been successful in terms of fighting corruption?
In all sincerity, you see, I think the essence of some of these debates, some of this positioning, some of these speeches, actually, it is intended to, you know, correct the abnormalities in the system with a view to Nigerian as a state moving forward. The truth of the matter, the facts, underlying facts, is that the present administration has not succeeded anywhere in terms of the fight against corruption. It has failed woefully, because the problem we have really is not just putting the laws in place. We have enough laws, you know, to prosecute corruption cases. Very effective. The problem we have is the willpower, to enforce these laws, to follow it to the letter. It is not just, propagating laws here and there. That is not what we need in this country. Have they accounted? The Jonathan's administration was said to be the most corrupt before now. Have they, all the monies that have been recovered, has it been properly accounted for? What, all this repatriation of funds, what have they been used for? Nigerians are interested in knowing what these funds have been used for. You don't tell us you are fighting corruption and you have recovered so much. Even at a time they went as much as telling us that some people even returned some money voluntarily. Our question is, what are these funds? How much is it? And what has these funds been used for? Can we keep dwelling on rhetorics? Are you taking Nigeria for a ride?
I just want to come in here because the government, I think in the last 2 budget cycles, told us that they were using the funds in bringing the funds into the budgeting system. So I come to you, senior advocate. What do you say are some of the successes that can be ascribed to the Buhari administration? Under Obasanjo, we saw him putting in place the EFCC as an institution, putting in place the ICPC, and then of course he went on overdrive trying to ensure that the system was cleaned before leaving office in 2007. What will you ascribe to the Buhari administration as it tries to exit by next year as having done to institutionalize the fight against corruption?
You see, the issue is you can't give what you don't have in your mind. From the day of inception of the government, what was its attitude? Let me bring you back to what happened in 1983. In 1983, when His Excellency the President came into office, one of the things he said is that politicians who were making appointment to public office as stooges for siphoning money. I did my long essay in the university on Decree number 3, recovery of public assets. And so that put me in a very, very strong perspective of looking at the man who was driving that recovery. That is His Excellency Buhari. President Buhari. So, if in 1983 he said that people are making an appointment as a way of compensating their stooges and their people for purposes of siphoning public fund, then we must have to put in perspective the way appointments have been done since 2015 till date. We must put that, because if you have in mind that appointment is for purposes of siphoning, making stooges and compensating this and compensating that, then it means that from beginning you did not have anything about fighting corruption, because the appointment you are making is for purposes of compensating certain people, and where those people become a parochial small entity, then it means you have an idea, you have an agenda. Then, let's come to this issue of pardon. Pardon. What are we pardoning? First, Dariye, Nyame, and all the rest of them. The question the people will ask you, these two people, these two elements, this element, are they the only people that were corrupt during their tenure? They stayed, each of them stayed 8 years. There were other counterparts from other states, other states, south, north. Why are they not prosecuted?
So we should bring federal character into the state pardon.
The fact is that there is not pardon, prosecution.
Oh, okay.
No, not pardon.
Okay.
Not pardon.
Okay.
Pardon is a right. There is no need of killing me and naming a stadium after me. What is the need? What is the need of killing me and naming a stadium after me? What is the need of that pardon?
All right.
The corruption, the conviction have been done. The issue is, why are many other ones not prosecuted? Metu was convicted, for accepting money. The person that gave him, what is his fate?
All right, I'll just ask you to hold on right now while we go on this short break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation as to what is actually happening on Nigeria's fight against corruption. I mean, President Buhari came on the strength of being someone who will, eventually give us a corrupt-free society. But unfortunately, based on some observations and, of course, the state pardon, most analysts are hitting the government hard. When we come back, we'll find out if indeed the government is doing so much before it exists next year. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, and we still have been discussing Nigeria's fight against corruption, and I have with me in the studio CHUKWUMA-MACHUKWU UMEH, who's the senior advocate of Nigeria and the former attorney general, and then of course our own AUWAL Rafsanjani, the executive director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Centre and the head of Transparency International in Nigeria. And at the offside studio, we are being joined by GABRIEL NWAMBU, who is the director general of the Global Center for Conscious Living Against Corruption. And I come to you, Rafsanjani. We've seen the National Assembly, which is supposed to support the executive, churning out bills, and then we've seen several investigations, corruption allegations, including in the judiciary. You remember when the justices of the Supreme Court had to write against the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the former Chief Justice of Nigeria. The National Assembly said it was investigating it. Now we want to find out, apart from the probes, arrests, and prosecutions that we are seeing, should anti-corruption fight be about prevention rather than just going around to play all these games, as some people say it, when people have been, seem to have been, putting their hand in the till?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, we have to understand the context. Buhari administration, when it came, there was no any effort to ensure that state government, because fight against corruption is supposed to be a collective thing. So a situation whereby APC has majority of the state governors, local government chairmen, and they are not keen into the fight against corruption of Buhari administration. His ministers, many of them, they have no business with any anti-corruption. His DGs and other appointees, they have no business with anti-corruption. So that's why it becomes a slogan. And when there's no concurrent effort and action to ensure that even key issue that will help Nigerians to see that truly the government is fighting corruption. For example, the President Buhari, before he came to power, he said payment of subsidy is a fraud, it's corruption. But 7 years after, Muhammadu Buhari government is the one that has paid the highest subsidy, which he called then fraud, which means we can say legitimately fraud, because Nigerians, they don't see any subsidy. What is been happening is just fraud that is being taken with borrowed money, because the money is not even ours. We have to go and borrow money to pay fraud, to be financing fraud. So government did not have a laid down foundation of the fight against corruption in the first place, because if you would have make sure that you have a team both at the state, at local, state and national level that believes in your aspiration of fighting corruption. How
about the proverbial body language? Where is body language?
Body language does not translate to policy and legal as well as practice of the fight against corruption. The second thing that I want to say that of course, I recognize the role that ICPC is doing in terms of public education, civic education, what civil society are also supporting them for doing, because they are apparently the only organization that are engaging on civic education, educating Nigerians so that we are able to prevent the corruption from happening. Not this drama that you wait until when the corruption happens and then you now start wasting public taxpayers' money to pursue it, and because of the lazy work done, improper investigation, you got caught and court throw the case away. The third issue is that to show you that the government did not have plan to fight corruption. We have been talking about judicial corruption. You have a sitting vice president who is a son, who is a lawyer, who's supposed to have even helped to lead in that direction. Nothing has happened tangibly in terms of judicial reforms that can, deal with issues of corruption and corrupt people in a very systematic manner. So you can be safe to say that the government did not understand that there's a difference between campaign and when you come to government to actually put in practice system and practices that can help mitigate and fight corruption.
Yeah, but that's why I ask you that of the National Assembly. Isn't the National Assembly supposed to support the executive? Have they been doing that? Because it's a bit an APC-led National Assembly since 2015.
This is why I was telling you that the state governors, the local government, the ministers, the DGs, the Director General, many of the appointees of the President, including the National Assembly, we are not in tandem with the so-called intention of Buhari to fight corruption. Because as far as I'm concerned, it remains intention. Because if you cannot put system that can block the corruption from happening, you only wait for it to happen. And even when it happens, government money is spent to prosecute those cases. Do you know how much money government spent to prosecute the people they have pardoned? So much, millions, if not billions, have been spent, going to so many countries to gather data and information. You suddenly come to say, this is not this thing. You have not even prosecuted anybody to jail anybody, but you are freeing those, previous regime that have laid the foundation for the trial that led to the, eventual.
Now, how would this be received by the anti-graft agencies? I mean, officers there. Do you think that this will demoralize them? I read of an officer who was complaining that he almost got killed by some supporters of one of those who have been pardoned now because he was in the UK trying to gather evidence, and that evidence was critical in the eventual jailing of that person. So how would that EFCC officer be feeling at the moment? Generally,
it has actually compromised the safety and security and motivation for the genuine people fighting in the anti-corruption agencies. You have a lot of people within the police, EFCC, ICPC, code of conduct that are genuinely interested in fighting corruption. But this political interferences, is making their work difficult. They are not going to be able to do much, and that is why you see some of them, they are also relaxed. They don't really worry themselves, because why do you want to put yourself in danger? And then at the end of the day, the people you are hunting with evidence, with the fact that they have did something wrong for the state, they are now being given appointment. Remember, there are some shameless people in this regime that even now as I speak to you, one of them is a minister. He has a case with ICPC on corruption issue. He has not resigned, he has not been removed, and yet he's the one calling for sanction for some people. So there's a shameless people everywhere. And that is because the government did not really actually, have, think tank, policy, programs, and even strengthen the legal framework that we have to fight corruption. So it remains a propaganda, it remains, an image-making laundering. However, let me not also condemn to say that everything is not being done. Yes, we agree that there are some few instances where something good has happened. For example, Naiti has actually developed on the beneficial ownership. It has developed a beneficial ownership register that can unveil and show who owns what is, in the oil industry. We salute government. Where government did something good, we commend government and we support them. So we are not enemy, we are not also politicians. We are out there to strengthen and support our country because it is our country. That is why we go around all over the world to talk about our country and to also draw the attention of the official who are having rented time to do something credible, tangible, so that the country can move forward.
Okay, and I come back to you, Gabriel. Let's talk about some of the instruments that the Buhari administration put in place. You remember that there's this committee that's led by Professor Isesege. I think it's the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. We have seen that committee going full force, trying to support the anti-graft agencies, but all of a sudden, even Professor says again, we no longer hear from him again. What exactly is happening? Do you think that some activities or actions by the Buhari administration has even dampened the spirit of those that are supposed to help it to deliver on this fight against corruption?
Thank you so much. You see, it is just evident that even the anti-graft officers, anti-graft agents, you know, they risk their lives, they risk their family, the lives of their families. They even mortgage friendship to go all out, you know, fight corruption, you know, try as much as possible to gather evidence, you know, to prosecute cases using taxpayers' money. Some of these, look at the two trials now, this Joshua Dariye and Nyame. The trial has been over a decade. Taxpayers' money being depleted. In fact, one of the matters I was following, you know, a witness had to be flown in from the United Kingdom on several times as an evidence in a particular matter. These are taxpayers' money. And then after doing all of this, you now just come up and you say a state pardon on an anti-corruption matter, whereas the guy who stole a phone or a laptop is busy languishing in jail, and his matter has not even been concluded, and probably has spent like 3, 4, 5 years in prison without his matter. He has not even been sentenced, as it were. You see, the body language, the manner at which the present administration is facing this war against corruption, you know, it demoralizes even the officers themselves. They will not have the morale anymore. They have to be quizzing themselves whether it is worthwhile anymore to go all out to arrest, you know, prosecute high-profile politicians, because these are people who had instrumentalities that could, you know, follow them up, and even their supporters can meme or kill them, as the case may be. But what happens to them? Will they keep doing this?
I'll just ask you. I'll ask you to hold on there while I bring in the senior advocate of Nigeria, because we've talked about the issues in the executive and then, of course, the legislature. Let's talk about the judiciary too. Of course, you would have read about those justices that rose up against the Chief Justice of Nigeria with issues of corruption allegations. We have even heard that the Secretary of the Supreme Court is also emerged. The EFCC is investigating, you know, allegations of bribery and all of that over contracts here and there. And then the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, came into this government and usurped the EFCC into his office. In all of this, how do you think that the judiciary and then, of course, both those at the bar and the bench have fared in terms of helping the country to fight corruption?
Remember that the court can only prosecute a case that is brought before it. When Nyame and Dariye were brought, were they not convicted? So, yes.
But the same Malami accused the judiciary of not being strong in helping the executive.
No, that's not the issue. Malami issue is not the issue here. Because in the first place, you mentioned the Osage's body. There was this presidential committee set up for prosecution of corrupt cases.
Yeah, I mean, the Presidential Advisory Committee against corruption.
That one is Presidential Advisory. This one is Presidential Committee for Prosecution of Cases, which I was a member.
Okay, that's the one chaired by the lady...
For now the chairman of ICPC.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I was in that committee. But after about 3 months, when I saw the way things were going, I put a letter resigning. I resigned. One, why do you select people you bring to the court? Why? Why do you select people you bring to the court? Why do you target only some people? Why do you target some certain group? Dariye, Nyame, Metu, Haba. Why? When people see that you are selecting people that are coming to the court, you have a great element of bias, and non-committed attitude. The body language you have mentioned is most important critical element in prosecution of corruption. If you have not shown any positive sign, if you are discriminating on who to prosecute, certain elements must be shown to be in prison, and some elements will never go to prison. Some race will go to prison, some religion will not go to prison. Then you have brought a lot of problem into the whole system.
Yeah, so can we say that is also responsible for the slowness
yes,
of the Segel-led committee? Because look, since Buhari won in 2019, it's just gone down. Look, I mean, we haven't heard so much from him again.
Everybody listens to everything. Anything happening, people draw it immediately, analyze it immediately, and then internalize it in their lives. So, when there is sincere corruption, that no matter if you are a Ibero man, good. If you are an Igbo man, good. If you are a Fulani man, go in. Once that standard is set, everybody will sit up.
Now, how about
where you select people?
The judiciary itself, I mean, I want you to speak about that. We've seen the judiciary also being enmeshed in allegations, corruption allegations here and there, to the extent that the Chief Justice of Nigeria, I mean, had to be shoved aside because of these allegations.
I want to let you know. You see, we are running a constitutional system. Judiciary, once you come to the judiciary, the Constitution, which we must obey, has created a channel for taking care of any corrupt judge. That is NJC. That is the Constitution. The Constitution was not made by the judiciary. The Constitution was not made by the judges. The Constitution was made by Nigerians.
So it is said that the head of the NJC itself, I mean, being accused by fellow justices of the Supreme Court, aren't we in big trouble, senior advocate?
Of course, we're in big problem. Of course, that's we're in big problem. That is why there are a lot of reform that need to take place. But reforms without a good driver at the center, executive, without that one, I think it will be almost running round and round and round. Because where people see you as not being committed, they will say, why me? I was in a meeting, I was just in a social meeting or party where this issue of Nyame and this thing was highlighted. I had some of the comments there that let them pardon them now. After all, are they the only one? Is it because he's part of us? That's why he must be prosecuted. I'm not talking about conviction. Conviction, yes, because there's evidence before the court. I'm talking about prosecution. Who that brings them to the court? Why selecting people you bring to the court? Why?
Okay, you've asked a very strong question there. Why? As we try to get into the election season, it looks like the political parties are not interested in talking about the issue of corruption. I come to you, Rafsanjani. How do we ensure that the issue of corruption is set at the front burner? Or is it that Nigerians themselves are tired of talking about corruption? Because it looks like, people don't want to talk about it again. Maybe they did in 2015 and 2019. They haven't seen any results. What do we do?
This is one of the very disappointing developments in Nigeria, that personally the president has been crying that he was a victim of electoral fraud, and it took him 7 years plus with active engagement of civil society day and night advocating for the reform in the in the electoral system, for him to have agreed at the last minute to assent his signature. It shows you the mindset that the government was not actually looking at political corruption as a major corruption issue that need to be dealt with. And that is why you can see that once you come to the ruling party, your case is virtually going to disappear. We have seen so many cases, so many instances where people who are facing EFCC and ICPC.
But just to add to that, if I may cut in, we've seen Senator Nwoboshi in Delta State, Delta North, who crossed from from PDP to APC, and he's eventually been jailed. So
no,
is it in all instances? I'm telling you
no, that's just one incident. Somebody is facing trial of, a prosecution was EFCC and ICPC, but he was met, once he was made even a minister. And there are so many of those kind of people who have decome from PDP to APC. In fact, the former chairman of APC even made it very clear that whatever crime you commit, come, we are forgiving you. And that has been the policy of the government, you know. And we can see that just some few instances where you just mentioned that somebody had actually gone to jail. So what I'm saying is that political corruption is a major issue. You know, financing, you know, through illicit, you know, or money laundering to finance the election and engage in massive vote buying is corruption. And that is why we will not get tired of talking about, you know, dealing with issues of evil of corruption, because corruption has led to the underdevelopment of this country. Okay. Corruption has exposed us to this danger and risks of insecurity, because procurement, defense procurement, is nothing but corruption, you know, that is going on. And that is why you see with all the billions spent till today, even our police, they are not well equipped, and the army, the officers are just being exposed to being killed by Boko Haram and terrorists. No proper, you know, facilities and equipment, no even incentives. Well, this is why we must continue to talk about corruption. So my own is that if our talk will make these corrupt people, these politically corrupt people, uncomfortable with what we are talking about, I will continue to do that. I will not stop. We did not start today. We did not start with Buhari. We have been, since when I was a student in my year 1 in the university, we have been fighting for social justice. So it's not about Buhari. It is not about Jonathan.
Okay.
It's not about
It's good you're putting that in proper perspective. And Gabriel, as we try to coast home now, how do we ensure that the issue of corruption, fighting corruption, you know, is at the front burner as we're getting into the election, so that you have the likes of Tinubu, Atiku, Peter Obi and Kwankwanso all talking about it, so that Nigerians know that they are committed to fighting corruption and not just shoving aside the issue whenever you bring up the issue of fighting corruption?
Well, the issue is that, you see, the political elites that occupy public offices in Nigeria, most of them are wanting one way or the other, you know, and that is why it is difficult, very difficult to deal, you know, decisively even on the party matters if it affects political parties. Now you have persons. You have, for example, you know, there is an individual who is a serving senator. You know, he was an ex-governor. He has been sent to jail. He has been convicted. All of a sudden, the Supreme Court said, you know, ordered a retrial for that same human being, that same individual, the senator. Right now, the same senator has won a ticket. The matter is being retried now. He has won a ticket to also contest another election in 2023. What are we doing to ourselves in Nigeria? You see, people look at the Nigerian state, the Nigerian government, as people that are not serious. You see, how can people like this now talk about corruption? How many of these people have clean results? We talk about results. Some say the rats have eaten their results. Some say that their results have been stolen. Some say that they don't know have. These are people that will eventually occupy the political elites, the space there. How would these same people come and talk about corruption, where they, in the first instance, they do not even have they don't even have result, educational qualifications. They don't have. So it becomes a mirage. Outside the country, Nigeria is just like a laughing stock, because our government, our administration is not serious. They do not want to face the war against corruption, whether it is political corruption, whether it is vote buying, whether it is inducement, voter inducement. Nigeria as a state is not serious. It's not serious.
Okay, well, that's why we have to continue to put pressure on our government to be serious based on what you have said. And of course, the Buhari-led federal government still has some months to go before it call its quit in May next year. And of course, this conversation will continue even as we get into the election season. But I can tell you that the institutions of states are meant to serve beyond any particular government. So a lot of Nigerians will tell you that saying that we are not serious in fighting corruption may be disputable, because, I mean, when a new government comes in place, we'll still have the ICPC and EFCC in place. But of course, we must thank you so much for joining us. Gabriel Nwambu is an anti-corruption activist. He has been speaking with us on several issues. And of course, I have CHUKWUMA UMEH here, who is also a senior advocate of Nigeria, and of course, a former Attorney General, and of course, AUWAL RAFSANJANI, who's the Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative and Advocacy Centre, CISLAC. He's also the head of Transparency International in Nigeria, has been enlightening us on some of the things that are in place to ensure that the fight against corruption does not die with one administration, but continues to go on. Well, we must thank you so much, gentlemen, for helping Nigerians to understand all these issues, and we hope to have you here again next time. Well, that's how it's been for this edition of the Arise interview. Please join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here, goodbye.